In this scenario, we'll see how to secure our internal API access and why is it necessary and how do we do it. So more often than not, you can see huge enterprises have multiple business units or LOBs with varying goals and KPIs. So when one business unit wants to use the APIs that are built by the other business unit, it is better to have a formal relationship. And also it is important to make sure that the external business unit, even within the same company, is not abusing our APIs, right? So it's better to secure that and also track that relationship and have that formal agreement. And that is where, especially if your services are already a part of the service mesh and are managed by OpenShift Service Mesh, the native integration of Red Hat 3Scale and Service Mesh would shine. So for example, in our current example, let's take the travels portal or the online channel business unit and the travels agency business unit, right? So the travel portal business unit will try to access the APIs of the travel agency, and we'll try to create a formal agreement, a secure channel on how they can access this. We will, our demo will focus on uh, making sure that all the portals which are part of the travel portal business unit will only be able to access these APIs if they have an API key, and that is done through the native integration that 3Scale and Service Mesh give out of the box. So to create this integration, first things first, we'll need a couple of access tokens that will help 3Scale and Service Mesh communicate. So first, let's get the admin access token of 3Scale. Put this in your OpenShift CLI. Get the admin access token. Copy it on a text pad so that you can remember it, and then go back to your 3Scale portal, account settings, personal tokens, and your travel demo internal product, and get your service token and copy it in your text folder. And now let's go ahead and use these secrets in our custom resource file that will create this whole integration. So first, let's copy the whole YAML and come back to our terminal to create the custom resource file. Let's say vim sme internal dot YAML. You can give any name here, but I've just given this, and this is going to be an empty file. Copy paste the YAML that I've copied from there and get into. So first things first, let us replace the access token here that we obtained. Okay, delete it. Access token. Paste. Now let's go ahead and replace the service token with the placeholder text. Let's go back to our text editor, find the service token, and there you go. And let's save this file. And before we deploy this file onto our cluster, let's check the situation in Kiali first. So everyone's happy, all the traffic is flowing through V1 from the internal portals, there is no authentication, all the traffic is green. Now as soon as we deploy that YAML, the integration is created, and if the calls are not authenticated, the traffic wouldn't pass through to the APIs, which means this whole graph will turn into red color, right? Which means there's no traffic flowing through. So let's go ahead and deploy that. And there's a command for that, oc apply f. I've just copied it. Oc apply f. There you go. It should create it. Just give a couple of minutes before we can go back to our Kiali portal, and the whole we can see how the traffic turns into red color because the calls are not authenticated, and the APIs, the whole the 3Scale service mesh integration wouldn't let the API calls go beyond that point because they are not authenticated. So let's go back to our Kiali portal and slowly notice the traffic changes to red color. So as you can see, the traffic will start changing to red color, and the whole graph to the right of the travels will get terminated because there is no traffic effectively flowing. As you can see, the numbers are coming down, and eventually they'll go to zero. So as you can see, in a couple of minutes, the whole traffic from your internal portals becomes red. That means the calls are not going to any, the API calls are not succeeding because they're not authenticated anymore. So for that, now we have to go back and add the API tokens the API keys that we obtain from 3Scale through to the deployments of these internal portals, so that the traffic starts flowing as such. So let's go back to 3Scale and check what is the token for this, right? Uh, so let's go back to applications, listing. Let's check for the VIG app first and its VIG secret. So let's go to the deployment of VIG app, and let's go to deployments, travel portal, VIG environment, and let's add a couple of environment variables. One is the name of the API key and the value of the API key itself, so that the calls are authenticated again. So let's go ahead and copy those values here. API user key name, API user key name, API user key value, and user key, and this is the secret that we got from 3Scale. So let's go ahead and deploy. So as soon as you do this, you will see the traffic flowing from VIG portal will start turning green. Just give it a couple of minutes before you go on to your Kiali to check this. So as you can see, the traffic flowing from VIG slowly turns into green. That means though the majority of traffic that's coming from travels and voyages, because they are not authenticated, is red, the traffic coming from VIG is able to go through all to all the different services, because we've just added the API key that we got from 3Scale. So if you repeat the same process for the other two portals, which is travel and voyages, we should come back to a graph which look like the original one with all greens, right? So that should be the goal. So let's go ahead and add these things to the other deployments too. Um, in a couple of minutes, once you're done with adding the environment variables and the API keys that you obtain from 3Scale to the deployments of the internal portals, you should see the traffic slowly turning into green, and eventually the whole graph should turn into green. As you can see here, we've returned to the original state because now all the calls are authenticated via 3Scale, and this was possible because one thing, it was possible because all the services were part of the service mesh, and we could leverage the native 3Scale service mesh integration. And as a result of this integration, there was no need for us to introduce an additional gateway for the internal traffic. In this scenario, service mesh itself acted as the data plane, and used 3Scale as a control plane instead of deploying an additional API cast gateway in the environment.